Today's episode is all about the surprising benefits of being consistent. If you're thinking about getting something started, continuing, or if you should try something new from scratch, then today's conversation is for you. Today, we're going to talk about surprising benefits of being consistent. If you feel like you're stuck, you're not sure what to do next, or if you're debating if you should keep going, then stay tuned because this episode may have just that little something to spark your breakthrough moment.
The Realtor 180 Podcast, where valuable conversations and industry experts collide. Let's dive in and transform your business today.
Mr. Kunkler, how are you today?
I am fantastic.
Fantastic. Oh my God.
I'm looking forward to this episode.
Me too. I feel like this has made the biggest change in my life, learning how to be consistent.
I cannot wait to unpack that.
We're going to unpack it.
What have you been up to? What's been good in your world?
I've been trying to be consistent on my projects.
Yeah? What's like a big project? What are you doing? What's going on?
I think I've mentioned this a few times, is my video a day for the year. Of course, it had to be the leap year, but it is still going. So successful so far.
Nice.
Yes, it's not easy.
Never is.
But we're going to talk about that and how to get over that.
Yeah, for sure.
How about yourself? Why are you fantastic?
I've gotten back into the gym.
That's so good.
As you know, I ran martial arts schools and I worked for different athletic clubs. So it's always been something that's been ingrained in me. And more recently, I turned my focus heavily on building my business, building my real estate business.
Yeah.
And with that, unfortunately, I got a little lopsided, got away from the health and fitness side.
I know. It's hard to keep that balance.
It's hard to be consistent.
Wah, wah.
And with that, the other day I just decided, literally, I found this amazing home gym, bought it, and then hired Clint Van Dyke, who is amazing. He's a professional bodybuilder who competes, but more importantly, he's a black belt, and him and I used to train together at the Kung Fu school. So
very cool.
I've
Your
known
buddy.
him for well over a decade, and
Wow.
it's cool to be working with him again in a new capacity.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Like him as your coach.
Yeah, I'm excited about that because it's, as you know, so much of what we do is mental, which is physical. And if we physically can't show up, the business falls apart.
Exactly. I think self-care is always forgotten, yet super important because it does relate to your business or anything that you do. If you're not well, you can't perform. That's just the bottom line, I think.
It reminds me of when you're on a plane, you're taking a flight, and they say when the oxygen masks drop down, what do they say?
Put it on yourself first.
Correct. Take care of yourself first. So then you can help everybody else. And unfortunately, when we get busy or we get overloaded,
I know. It's the first thing that goes is the self-care.
That parlays nicely into our conversation of being consistent and the importance of consistently caring for yourself.
Consistency, if I could just say, applies to everything in life, whether it's self-care, whether it's business, whether you're learning a new skill. I think it is super important. And I know, everybody kind of talks about it, and I don't know if you feel it like me, where it's like, okay, consistency, but, as much as I, whine about it, I have to admit it has made a huge difference in my life. So we'll go into that.
Yeah. And also, it plays into mindset, which really is consistency, is you have to decide that you're going to do that. In episode number 3, we talk about meditation and our consistency with that and the benefits. And it's interesting now thinking about it in our other episodes and even releasing these episodes weekly on the same day.
Right.
Consistency is king.
It's super important.
It's incredibly important. So let's
dive in.
Yeah, let's dive in a little bit deeper. Let's talk about the times when you weren't consistent. So let's talk about being erratic first and then getting frustrated with not getting the results. But can you think of in your you're
For sure.
creative and you shoot heavily on your iPhone and video.
Yep.
Talk us through that.
Yeah. So actually, I have a great story about first failing to be consistent and actually wanting to, and I didn't think of it as consistency. That wasn't, it was like, I'm going to be consistent. It was more of my frustration with my photography skills. So, I guess it's almost a decade now. I was getting into photography. I got this cool, DSLR when DSLRs were a thing. And I wanted to get better. But because I didn't have as many opportunities to take photos, that it was kind of choppy. It's kind of like when you're like for example, snowboarding or something. If you don't go to the lifts on a consistent basis, you're not going to get better. And you just have to just keep at it. Same thing with photography. It's like I'd forget the controls after, a month because I just, it just, you need that muscle memory. Anyway, so I was very inconsistent and I was frustrated with the lack of growth and I just wasn't getting any better at photography. And I really, really wanted to.
Interesting.
So what I did was, luckily I have a friend who is also into photography, Jenny, and she's like, oh, there's this thing where it's called, Project 365. And I was like, what is that? And she said, oh, it's, take a photo a day for a year. A lot of people do it. And luckily it was the beginning of the year was coming up. And so I was like, oh, cool. Like take a photo a day. And I was like, that's going to force
Sounds easy.
It sounds easy, right? Just like snap something. That's it for the year. And so I was like, oh, it's amazing. I'm going to do this. As easy as it sounds, I failed by February.
Oh, that's soon, early.
That is so soon. I failed so. And it was frustrating for me because, yes, I could have restarted. I could have kept going. But, when you break a streak, you're like, screw it. And then you're like, oh, God, I have to wait until next January to try again. It's such a long time.
Oh,
yeah.
That's
so
rough.
I failed the first year, but I succeeded the third year. And the reason why is because I failed the second year. Okay.
Wait, we just went from first to third. What happened to number two?
I failed again by like June. And it was even worse because I was halfway through the year and I failed. But, a few things happened, and I'm going to talk about what I realized I needed to do in order to become consistent. And this is key. Let me repeat. After 2 years of failure, I realized my patterns when I was headed for failure and what I needed to do in order to stay consistent.
I love that.
So I'm going to talk about that later. But the third year, the fourth year, the fifth year, it just went on. I dialed it in and I succeeded every single year. And then for 8 years, I did it.
Wow.
Yep.
So I love that you said that there's a pattern, and I absolutely feel and believe that success leaves clues. And if someone else is doing whatever it is that you want to do on that higher level, they're leaving clues behind, and there's patterns. And if you can pick up their patterns and their distinctions
and learn from them. Yeah.
It's like baking a cake. If Gordon Ramsay gives you the recipe and you follow the recipe, you're probably going to have a pretty awesome cake. Right. But if you decide, I only need a half an egg and I'm going to put a little extra flour in, and instead of chocolate, we're going to replace it with tuna. It's like, you're not even going to
chocolate cake.
Amazing, right? Like you've strayed way off from the recipe. So I really, I love that you brought up that little, that distinction, that little nuance.
Yes. And I have to say, I think what you're trying to say is listen to those that have come before you. If you can follow their path. I am the hard-headed one who refuses to look at other people's paths because I'm like, I'm not going to go that path. I'm always paving my own path. But sometimes I realize, well, first of all, I walk down my own path and I have to learn I have to make my mistakes.
Sure. Unfortunately,
that's how I learn. But yeah, if you want to fast track success, follow Gordon Ramsay's recipe. Don't put tuna in your chocolate cake.
Or follow Shawn's recipe. That is clearly not the way to make cake.
So that is my story. How about you?
It's interesting, and where my brain immediately goes is I'm doing something, I'm not getting the results. I start getting frustrated. I start doing it less, or I change something about it and then try it and then it doesn't work. And then I just kind of fizzle out and give up. And the reality is that one thing that was working, it's kind of like planting a seed. like, oh, I went out and watered it 2 days in a row and nothing happened. It's like, dude, a lot was happening. It just takes a long time for that little seed to fully mature and then grow through the soil and break through to the surface.
Can we just elaborate on that a little bit? Because I think that is one of the reasons why people give up so quickly, especially when it's something that takes a while to show results.
Yeah. On the flip side, I've also found when the results come really quick in the beginning, like the learning curve for that individual is really short, they fizzle out also, because it's like in their mind, it's too easy.
Yeah.
Like, it's like the pleasure comes from overcoming a challenge. Like the harder the battle, the sweeter the victory.
Yes.
And if it's too easy, it's like,
you lose interest, right?
You do.
Right.
And you look at like Jordan, who he didn't even make, I think it was his senior year of high school, the basketball team.
Oh, Michael Jordan. Yes.
Michael Jordan. He didn't even make the team.
I know. Isn't that surprising?
And then he worked his butt off.
Yes.
To I think maybe it was his junior year to his senior year. I don't know the specifics, but then he worked his butt off because he didn't get it.
Yes.
And he really wanted it. So then he worked harder, being consistent in his training and his work ethic to then get on the team and obviously.
Yeah. For those of you that want to learn more about Michael Jordan, there's a great documentary on Netflix called The Last Dance.
So to answer your question specifically, clearly I meandered off it. For years, for decades, I've sat in the sales seat, and anytime I was consistent with my follow-up or my outreach, which follow-up is an action, it's not what you say. We talked about that in one of the episodes.
Don't say just following up.
Where I just completely went off the rails, and it was episode number 4 of me just, don't say that. But anytime that I wasn't consistent in my activities, like with sales, there's very specific things that you should just be doing consistently over a period of time to then get the results. But anytime I didn't hit my numbers or I had a really bad quarter, it was always because I wasn't consistent. And it genuinely boiled down to I wasn't doing, most all businesses have a key list of just a few things that you need to do day over day to get to that result that you ultimately want. So I would say, it translated into
sales,
not hitting goal, not hitting bonus, not building to have a great year, because I was just missing the consistency in a few very small categories.
Yeah. So let's then talk about the other side. Okay. So what did you do? Hopefully you did something to become more consistent. And let's talk about the results now of, first, how did you overcome that inconsistency? And then, what were the results?
That's a great question. I'm going to refer to my martial arts years when I was training. And I remember people would always say to me, oh, you must have great discipline. And I was like, no, I just love doing it.
Oh, so that definitely helps if you love doing it.
So discipline to me, it's like you're pushing to do something. But if you love doing something, you're pulled to do that thing. So if you kind of think of a car and you have somebody in front of it pulling it, and then you have somebody behind it pushing it, it's going to move a lot easier.
Right.
Especially if one or the other isn't able to give 100% in that moment.
Interesting. Yes.
So if it's something you just despise and you don't like,
you're just not going to be.
It's hard to push for a long period of time and sustain it. Yeah. If you don't have the passion, you need the discipline to force yourself to show up.
I agree.
But if there's that thing that you really enjoy and you focus on that thing within it.
Yep.
Or figure out a way to make it that that's the thing that gets you up early in the morning and it gets you to stay up late because you just want to keep consistently doing that thing, which is feeding the bigger picture, the bigger goal.
Right.
So I would say my martial arts training, I wasn't the biggest, I wasn't the fastest, I wasn't the strongest. Like I didn't have all of these key components, but, and this is the big but, is I showed up.
Because you just love to do it.
I love to do it. And it's kind of funny. More specifically, I remember I was just starting out. It was maybe like less than a year in. And that class was the first one of the day. So my teacher would be the one to show up, open the studio, and then we would go in. And I would show up early. I would show up before he showed up.
Wow.
And I did it consistently, like literally day after day after day after day. That one day, I mean, Mr. Chin is an awesome, like crusty old martial art. Maybe crusty's not the best word, but like I hold him in such a high regard. But he's like a man of very few words. And I remember one day he was like, "Here's the key."
You open it.
Yeah, because I would show up so early, so often that literally one day he gave me the key so I can go in and just start my training. And that was such an honor because I was able to show to him my dedication.
And he recognized it.
And he recognized it. And ultimately that's what built me to get my black belt, because
that's amazing.
I think it was just consistency.
If you enjoy that thing that you're trying to be consistent at, you have an immediate advantage over someone who has to make themselves do it.
Of course.
They don't really enjoy it.
I will caveat that with linking that thing that you're doing to your why. Because if the why is that thing that you really, really want to achieve, and you link that activity to the why, then you'll be more passionate about achieving your why. And that I share that because if you want to have that thing, but that line item is a chore that you don't necessarily enjoy, you can then find the joy in that through your why. Does that make sense?
Totally. And if I could just give an example in my photo a day, this is actually one of the things that I did in order to make myself take a photo a day, but I'll talk about it in a second. The ones that dropped off early or that never succeeded were ones who didn't have a why. For me, I feel like I succeeded and I kept trying because I wanted to become a better photographer. That was my why. But there were folks in my group who just really didn't care about being a better photographer, and they just did it because it was fun. And there wasn't a real reason for them to do it. And so there was no motivation to, really try hard, especially, 3 years in a row. But for me, I really wanted to do it. And I was seeing it was making a difference for me. But for sure, your why makes a big difference. You have to want to do it.
Which I am so excited for our audience to learn this, but you were consistent.
I was consistent.
For a very long period of time.
For a very long period of time.
What happened?
Well, first of all, before I get into the successes, because I think that's the payoff is the sweet thing. You're not being consistent just to be consistent.
Sure.
There's payoff. And I had a huge payoff, which was, I was like, holy cow. And when I tell people this, like I'm getting goosebumps because it's just like amazing. But anyway, first, let me tell you what I did in order to be consistent, because I think that is what's most helpful for people.
Yeah.
So after failing 2 years, I sat down and identified, when do I fail? And I think this is key.
Brilliant.
For everybody else who's trying, like, when are the points that I fail and what do I need to counteract that? So
I'm just going to make just a small word adjustment, but you didn't fail.
No.
You just didn't have the outcome you wanted and then
Correct.
Evaluated it. And that's so important that you did that. And I love that you did that.
Yeah. And I was like, I just really wanted to succeed. And I was like, why am I failing, basically?
Yeah.
And one was I was forgetting.
That's so simple.
So simple. And I think that's why everybody was failing. So I was like, screw that. I'm going to set an alarm like at noon. If I haven't taken a photo, then it's a reminder, because, you get busy, and I'm going to set an alarm at 10 PM. And if I still haven't taken a photo, then I'm going to get up and like make myself take a photo of something,
Yeah.
Right. So that was one thing. And that sort of worked the second year. But it's still would still forget.
It got you closer.
It got me closer. I got to June, right?
Yeah.
And then I created a group of accountability. So I said, hey guys, let's all join. I'm going to give a trophy out. And that year when I said, I'm going to give a trophy out, 3 people succeeded. I was one of them. And so I think give yourself a reward for being consistent.
What was the trophy? What'd you win?
It was like a $10 trophy, like photo a day. Like it was custom made and it had your name on it. And so, there's some pride to it, pride to succeeding. And I think that's the other thing is like, don't make it all painful. Like give yourself a reward or a prize
for
succeeding.
That's a great, I hate the term gamify, but yeah, give yourself, set up a reward system, make a little mini game out of it for you doing that thing that you want to do anyways.
Yes, there's that.
Okay.
So there's the reward, but also the pain of not succeeding. And I think for me, it was naturally built in with this particular challenge, but it doesn't matter what the thing is that you're trying to be consistent at, you can always find the pain of not succeeding. For this particular case, the pain was, I didn't want to get to November and fail. Like, I am so close. I got the second year, I got to June and I failed. And that I just reminded myself, we don't want that to happen. We tried, for like, what's half of 365, that many days. And like, I don't want to fail and have to wait another 6 months to start again.
My favorite quote, and I know you've heard me say this, I didn't come this far to only come this far.
Yeah.
We're going to continue.
I thought you were going to bring up another quote that you always talk about. And that is, I like winning, but I hate losing more.
Oh my God. I hate, we talked about this, not on camera, but we should have. I hate losing.
Yeah.
Like, winning's good. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I hate losing. Losing is like, it's literally a nauseating feeling. I despise it. Like,
and one of the reasons I think you brought up was that it's just, you put so much effort into it, you practice and you train, and to lose and to in front of your family is just the shame.
There's so much to it.
Maybe we can talk about it in another episode, the winning and the losing. But if I could flip that, is that I liked succeeding, but I hated failing more. I think is if I could flip that. So because of those things that I changed, I had an accountability group, I had a reward, and then there was pain. I succeeded the third year.
Okay. That's amazing.
And then, so I succeeded the fourth year. The fifth year, now let's get into the successes.
So let's back this up. So for 5 years, you were trying to do this one thing. And out of 5, only 3 of the years you were successful. Is that correct?
Well, the fifth year, 8 years. I did 8 years.
So I'm sorry. So 8 years in total. How many of those years were you?
5.
So 5 of the 8 years you were consistent.
Yes.
Okay.
So 5.
That's amazing. That's like a very long time.
And if I could just say, it's similar to your martial arts. I just loved it. Like it was my thing. It was I was really passionate about it. I still am. So I think find something, like make sure it's something that can, hold the test of time.
Yeah.
Otherwise, maybe you're just really not into it and move on to something else that you really, really, really care about.
There's actually quite a few of them, interviews with Bill Gates, who says like he didn't take any vacations like until he was like in his 30s.
It's kind of like you.
It's kind of like me. And he worked
vacations.
like crazy 60, 80 hours a week.
Yeah.
And it's because he loved it.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't grinding at the office and like pushing himself to do it. He genuinely loved it.
Yeah.
Like loved it to the point where he couldn't stop doing it.
Right. And I think that's the thing.
That's the important part. Like that's the little takeaway, the nugget that you want to carry.
Yeah.
And finding it within all of the
tweak
tasks.
it so that it's something that you love. So for example, not to derail, but working out is hard for everybody.
Yeah.
If you just find the one thing that you love, that you actually enjoy. So I actually started doing yoga.
Sure.
And, before I was like, yoga. But now I found something that I love about yoga, and I'm able to, do it consistently.
Yeah.
Do something that you love.
To turn this back to the business world, and more specifically to realtors, is what's fascinating about this business and most businesses is, let's say you're a realtor, ultimately you're a salesperson. So you decide of all the different ways to generate leads, you decide on open houses, for example. And so you're consistent in hosting open houses. Then you get busy and you hire an assistant, and then the assistant winds up hosting the open houses. So you're doing the hosting a little bit less. And then as you grow to the next phase, you hire somebody else. And next thing you know, you're a manager in your building. And then the business starts to ping pong a little bit and go down. And then stepping back, that thing that you were passionate about and enjoyed, you're actually not doing it anymore, which is hosting the open houses and generating leads. And instead you're managing teams and managing people and managing process. And we, as businesses grow and morph, we lose track of the thing that really excited us, really drew us in.
Exactly.
And we start to meander away. And we talk about this in other episodes, but it's really separating working in the business and working on the business and figuring out not only you yourself, the individual, where your strong suit is, but where are all your team players? Where are their strong suits? Where do they really shine? And then how do you help them get to do more of that thing that they love to do?
Yes, I agree.
And in turn, like on the flight, is help yourself first.
Yeah.
Because the rest of everybody else will follow suit. And
I think that's such a good lesson, is that, like you get so lost in the business of real estate, and to remember to actually just why did you get into it in the first place?
Exactly.
And to like come back to it so that you don't burn out, so that you actually enjoy it, so that it doesn't feel like work.
I completely agree. And to remember, this is what I was hoping to achieve. This is my why.
Yeah.
And this is the thing I love to do.
Right.
Of course, we're going to have to do a bunch of crap we don't want to do. Like, I was just on the phone with my bookkeeper for like 2 hours trying to clean up and organize some things. Like, did I enjoy doing that? Absolutely not. Like, that's not where I find my joy. That's par for course.
Yes.
But part of my week is always dedicated back to those things that I just love to do.
That's great. Yeah,
and
I think that's super important.
And that's to separate out what's pulling you towards that goal and what's pushing you, and to make sure you're balancing the two. Like, meeting with my bookkeeper, I had to push myself to do it. Right. But to go, like the other day, we had social distance drinks with a friend of mine. That was a pull. Like,
because you wanted to get something.
I really
enjoyed.
wanted to just catch up
I
and say, hey, how are you? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I think it's great because this applies to everybody, not just real estate. I think is to just kind of come back to what it is you enjoy doing. So for example, me, I have this YouTube channel, and yes, I like, publishing and getting views and subscribers. But I think you had recommended to me so that I could be more consistent to farm out the editing. And I was like, well, actually, that's what I love to do the most. So I would hate to do that, because then I wouldn't want to do it. I do it because I love to edit. So that's just kind of getting back to, let's remember why you started doing it, what you enjoy about it, and try to keep that. So I know we're kind of getting, towards the end of this, but I do want to first, I know we've been teasing out the benefits of being consistent. And so for me, for photography and doing that, in my 5th year, my work was discovered by Apple. And it was because I had been publishing to Instagram and Flickr, which was a thing still, day in, day out, every single day. My work was everywhere. Yeah. Okay. Like, imagine 5 years of content. There's no way that nobody would have been able to find me. So Apple approached me, and I had no idea it was Apple, and asked if they could license one of my photos. I had no idea it was going to be a big deal. And then they're like, oh, by the way, it's going to be in billboards all over the world. And I'm thinking,
what?
All over the world, what?
That's
and then
amazing.
I'm thinking, I thought it was going to be like little dinky posters, but I think everyone's all familiar with the campaigns, but it was like, gigantic billboards. So that was a huge payoff. And I'm not saying everybody's going to have such a huge payoff like that, but it opens you up to opportunities. I think that's the most important thing.
And I just want to toot your horn, if I may. But then Cult of Mac published a book, and within the book, you had a really amazing spread showcasing, like, let's be honest, you didn't just have a photo, you had a couple photos and a video that Apple, like mega brand, featured.
Yeah.
And that was all just virtue of being consistent with that thing that you love to do.
Yeah.
And you have no idea like how much I love that. And it's so inspiring. And just the other piece to remind people of, it was 8 years.
Yes.
There was 3 years of perceived failure.
Yes.
And then there was 5 years of just being consistent before the discovery.
Well, no, it wasn't. It was like the 5th year was the discovery.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
But yeah, it was like 5 years.
It was a long
trying.
time.
It was
my
a
point.
freaking long time.
That's a long time to do anything.
It's not a fluke, I have to say, because there have been things, and I don't want to go into, but that's just one great example. But there have been other things where I have been consistent in my life, and there has always been a payoff. There always is a payoff.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's things that you don't even think will come your way. It's like this particular example. And I believe in magic. I believe there's always something that you didn't expect but is amazing. And you're like, I'm so glad I did this. There is always something like that. For those of you who know what I'm talking about, say it in the comments. What was the one thing that you found was a surprise, a pleasant surprise to being consistent? Besides, learning the hours and getting a new skill, there's always something surprising.
Well, on that note,
note,
there's no higher note that we can leave on. That's bravo. I think that's such an amazing achievement and testimonial to just showing up and being consistent.
Yes. And we did not say be perfect at it. That's key. I wanted to just say that.
That is so true.
Just be consistent.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Realtor 180, where industry experts elevate your business. Be sure to subscribe and share this episode with a friend. Until next time, keep thriving.